Hello everyone, thanks for coming outside me today. Today I want to talk about the two things that lead to having a forgiving setup and what forgiveness truly actually means, because it's kind of one of those terms that gets thrown along right out there with things that are like, oh, my bow's so smooth, it's so fast, it holds like a dream, all that sort of stuff. That's really user specific, but there are certain numbers and certain things you can look at to figure out if a bow or an arrow setup are going to be forgiving. Now usually I don't have an issue with forgiveness, I more or less have an issue with me not performing well with that bow based on the draw length, the poundage, the arrow build in of itself, how it's tuning for me. I want stuff that's simple, I want stuff that's easy, and I want stuff that's very forgiving when I'm taking those awkward shots in the heat of the moment. So starting with the bow itself, this is an elite result. Yeah, it's a target bow, it's in this pretty blue, but it doesn't really matter what the bow is. There are usually numbers that you can figure out very quickly if a bow is going to be forgiving or not. In this case, we have a 38-inch axle length. That's quite long. A lot of hunting bows are between 27 and 32. So you're gaining a lot of forgiveness in the sense of how this bow stabilizes itself. You see I can hold it here with just 2 fingers and it takes no effort whatsoever. That allows to have a really clean shot. The downside of it is it's not very maneuverable. Although I've hunted with 37, 38, and 39-inch bows without a problem, for some smaller statured archers or guys who just don't want to lug around this much weight into the woods and this much length into the woods, you're going to lose that forgiveness. The brace height is another thing. You're talking 7 to 8 inches of brace height normally for a lot of target bows, and what that does is it shortens your power stroke, meaning when this bow is at full draw, from where it goes from full draw to here is the power stroke, because that's where it's giving the power in the stroke to the arrow to send it down range. The longer the brace height, the less power stroke you get. So I have a 31-inch draw length, and let's say this is a 7-inch brace height, I get a 24-inch power stroke. But let's say this went to a 5-inch brace height. I now gained 2 extra inches of power stroke, meaning I've gone from 24 to 26. That's going to make the bow a lot faster. It's going to make it a lot more energy efficient in the sense that you're giving it more and more, but it also is going to keep that arrow on the string longer because my power stroke has now been lengthened. Because my power stroke's now been lengthened, as soon as I release and I start to shift and I start to move up here and I start to work on my grip and everything and all that, I've lost forgiveness because now the arrow is going to be on the bow longer. And that little bit of tweak, that little bit of movement, that little bit of extra push that's not consistent shot to shot, I start to lose forgiveness, and I can start to see it in my tuning as well as my group sizes downrange. And speaking of speed, you'll often see bows that are going to be more forgiving are usually going to be less than 340 feet a second IBO. The closer you get down to 320, 310, you're going to be incredibly forgiving because a lot of those also have that larger brace height. Now if you have a short brace height bow like 6 inches and it's still only shooting about 310 feet per second, that's not a whole lot of forgiveness as much as it's just a slower cam. This bow here, actually I don't even remember what the result is off the top of my head. I imagine it's in the 330 somewhere, but because of the larger brace height, it makes it a very forgiving setup. If you have a bow that's doing 340 up to 350, and particularly again that short brace height, you're going to lose a lot of forgiveness because it's going to be more radical. Now one thing that's debatable for archer to archer, because it all depends on the feel and how they like to shoot their bow, is the amount of let off on the cam. Now the beauty of the elite result, the elite cure, and now the remedy and the encore as well, is that the bow cam is incredibly adjustable, more so than any other cam style on the market today. You can adjust this in 1/4 inch draw lengths, which in fact is exactly what I've done. I've actually taken my module here, the string stop module, and I've moved it in 1/4 of an inch. That has lowered my let off by about 5%. So I'm right there in that I have to stay steady on the back wall. I get the limb stop, so I get the feel that I want, and that is very important when it comes to your let off and how your draw length is held at full draw as well. If you're overextended, your forgiveness is going to go away. If you're too short and too in tight, your forgiveness is going to go away. Finding that right perfect place with every single bow that you shoot. My cure is at a different draw length because of it's a hunting setup, and the forgiveness I get with that, it's at just under 31 inches. This bow right here is a little bit over 31 inches, about 31 1/4, and this is exactly where I like just this feel and this string angle, and it gives me the most forgiveness when I go to shoot indoors 3D or just around in the backyard. So let's put the bow down here and let's actually talk about arrows. So unfortunately I just got done doing a fletching video with the new glue from Sirius and Tough Head Archery, and I've glued up these beautiful gold tip XT hunters. These are 300 spines with these white wraps and blue blazers, and they look really spanking nice. This would make a really good looking 3D arrow. The issue with is they're grouping just fine, but their forgiveness is terrible. So this arrow is only in the low 400s of grain weight. I actually don't remember off the top of my head what it is. It's a standard aluminum insert and a 100 grain point. The FOC on this arrow is only about 7 to 8%, which is not abnormal for a target arrow. However, it is flying like garbage when I don't have proper form. And this is something that it's a really good idea for you to try. And particularly if you got lighted nocks or a really bright sunny blue day like we have today, and you have some really bright nocks. If your arrows don't have bright nocks, I recommend you put some in, like these orange on my Victory VTACs. We'll get to those guys here in a little bit. But on these gold tips here, I have white nocks and these bright blue veins, and I was able to see this arrow literally flying sideways in all different directions whenever I changed my grip just a little bit. The grip is by far the most important part because it's the only part of the bow that you have full hand contact with. Back here, it's just the jaw of the release, right? So you get maybe a little bit of face pressure, but up here, just a little bit of torquing and tweaking can really ruin your forgiveness. And that's what I was getting with this arrow. Now, I usually shoot a standard diameter arrow for 3D because it mimics my hunting setup the most. But with a standard diameter arrow, I usually shoot pretty decent scores in hunter class. But the forgiveness of this arrow was absolute garbage. It's not a bad arrow, shoots really well in groups. When I'm on, it's on, but when I'm starting to take those shots at 30, 32, and I'm not really sure, and I'm kind of torquing a little bit, this arrow was flying sideways and impacting 3 inches outside of the group. Now, I knew it wasn't a nock tuning issue or another flyer because I have all of my numbers, or my arrows numbered and labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I was getting all the different arrows to fly funky because of a different grip issue and because of the forgiveness of the arrow setup as it pertains to the bow. So switching over to the Victory VTAC, this is the VTAC 23, and I shoot this predominantly for indoor. I'm not a big fat shaft outdoor person, predominantly just because it's annoying to set up multiple different arrows to shoot out of multiple different bows, but the VTAC 23 is a daggum good arrow. This is the 380 spine. It's a lot softer because it's a lot dynamically stiffer. And if you have questions about dynamic stiffness, follow the link in the description below. I have a video on why arrows behave differently statically or dynamically, and particularly depending on their diameter. So a 23 diameter arrow is the max you can use for hunter class. I usually use them for indoor, like I said. I have some black blazers on here so it disappears on target, and a little bit of an orange nock. And then orange nock was perfect because I tuned these using the set technology on the Elite Resolve, got a perfect bullet hole in just 2 shots, brought it outside, and I was doing all sorts of funky angles, and I was getting just this slightest bit of knock kick up, down, left, right, and my arrows were still grouping in a softball size at 30 yards. And a softball size at 30 yards for most IBO 3D targets, as long as I pick my range right, is still in the 10 ring. Right, so I might miss a few bonus rings here and there, but that's with really bad form. That's with a bad grip pressure that I don't usually use. So in the heat of the moment, I'm not paying attention, I can still get that forgiveness out of this arrow. It's just a different arrow and it's much more forgiving, and I'm getting much better groups. And I'm not saying that you need to go out and buy VTACs or other different arrows that are super expensive. What I am saying though is try different arrow types. If you want to try a micro diameter arrow, shoot a standard diameter next to it. If you want to try a standard diameter, try a fat diameter next to it, and particularly for the target world. You might find that your bow is a little bit more forgiving and suits your style a little bit more just from that little bit of change. I somehow always find a way to make a 2-minute video like 10 minutes long. I'm so sorry, folks. I don't know. Plus also my kids are like 4 feet away here on the swing, so you're probably hearing jingling chains and popping wood and metal this entire video. Hey Soph, how you doing? Ab, you doing all right? She's doing good. So anyway, that's all for this video. I'm gonna get back to shooting here. It is still cold, even though it looks bright and sunny. It's still a little bit chilly, and I need to get moving around. If you have any questions about forgiveness or bow setups or arrow tuning or whatever that may pertain to the sport of archery, follow the links in the description below. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, send me an email, or drop a comment down below if you have your own experiences with forgiving setups and just forgiveness in general. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery, archery hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful creation, and we'll get to see you next time. We did it, guys. Yay!